February 22, 1946, Texarkana, a city sitting exactly on the border between Texas and Arkansas. Main Street literally divides the two states. One side Texas, one side Arkansas. A quiet place where everyone knew everyone. A place where nothing bad ever happened. That night, a young couple was parked on a lover's lane just outside town. It was a popular spot, a quiet country road where young couples went to be alone. The moon was full. The night was clear. Suddenly, a man appeared at their car window. He was wearing a white hood over his head with holes cut out for eyes, like a crude executioner's mask. He was holding a pistol. He pointed it directly at them. He forced them out of the car. He beat the young man unconscious with the gun. Then he turned on the young woman. He beat her, sexually assaulted her with the gun barrel. Then he vanished into the darkness. They survived. Barely. They reported the attack to police. They described the white hood, the gun, the brutality, the complete randomness of it. Police thought it was an isolated incident, a disturbed individual, a one-time thing. They were terribly, tragically wrong. Over the next 10 weeks, the hooded man would strike 4 more times. 5 people would be murdered. 3 others would survive brutal attacks. All victims were couples. All were attacked at night on lonely roads. All were young. The newspapers gave him a name, the Phantom Killer. Police launched the largest manhunt in Texas history. The Texas Rangers came. The FBI sent agents. Hundreds of officers searched the area. Roadblocks were set up on every road. A citywide curfew was imposed. 10 p.m., no exceptions. But the Phantom was never caught. After his final brutal attack in May 1946, he simply vanished, like a ghost, like he'd never existed at all. No one knows who he was, no one knows where he went, and no one knows if he killed again somewhere else under a different name. This is the story of the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, the phantom who terrorized an entire city and then disappeared forever into American legend, February 22, 1946. Friday night, around 11:45 p.m., Jimmy Hollis, age 25, and Mary Jeanne Larey, age 19, were parked on a quiet dirt road about 3 miles outside Texarkana city limits. It was a spot known locally as a lover's lane. Young couples went there for privacy. It was secluded, safe, or so they thought. They were sitting in the car talking when suddenly a bright flashlight beam hit their windshield, blinding them. A man's voice shouted at them to get out of the car. Now, Jimmy thought it might be police. Maybe they were being told to leave. He started to open the door, but the man wasn't police. He was wearing ordinary clothes, work pants, a jacket, and over his head, a white cloth hood with crude eye holes cut into it. He was holding a pistol. The hooded man ordered them both out of the car immediately. Jimmy hesitated. He was trying to assess the situation, trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of prank. The hooded man didn't wait. He struck Jimmy in the head with the pistol, hard. Jimmy fell to the ground. The man hit him again, and again. Jimmy lost consciousness. Then the hooded man turned his attention to Mary Jeanne. She was screaming, trying to run. He caught her. He beat her with the pistol. Then, in an act of unspeakable cruelty, he sexually assaulted her with the gun barrel. Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, the hooded man ran into the darkness. He didn't take anything, didn't rob them, didn't explain. He just attacked them and ran. Mary Jeanne managed to revive Jimmy. They stumbled to a nearby house and called police. Both survived. Jimmy required extensive medical treatment for his head injuries. Mary Jeanne was traumatized but physically recovered. They gave police detailed descriptions: the white hood, the pistol, the violence, the randomness of it all. Texarkana police investigated. They searched the area, interviewed potential suspects, found nothing, no physical evidence, no witnesses, no leads. The police chief made a statement to the local newspaper. He called it an isolated incident committed by a disturbed individual. He assured the public there was no ongoing danger. He was wrong. 3 weeks later, the hooded man would strike again, and this time, he would kill. March 24, 1946, Sunday morning. around 6 a.m. A local farmer was driving down a rural road called Richmond Road, about 6 miles outside Texarkana. He noticed a car parked on the side of the road. It looked abandoned. He slowed down to take a closer look. What he saw made him immediately turn around and drive to the nearest police station. Inside the car were 2 bodies, a young man and a young woman, both dead. Both shot multiple times in the back of the head. The victims were identified as Richard Griffin, age 29, and Polly Ann Moore, age 17. They'd been on a date the night before. They'd gone to see a movie in town, then drove out to a lover's lane. They never came home. Richard had been shot twice in the back of the head with a .32 caliber gun, execution style. Polly Ann had been shot 4 times, also in the back of the head. The killer had shot her, then shot her again to make sure she was dead. There were no signs of sexual assault, no robbery. Nothing was taken from the car. The killer's only apparent motive was murder itself. Police immediately connected this attack to the February 22nd assault on Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jeanne Larey. Same area, same type of victims, young couples, same isolated location, same nighttime attack. But this time, the Phantom had killed. The town of Texarkana erupted in fear. Parents kept their teenage children home. Young couples stopped going out at night. Hardware stores reported a massive increase in gun and lock sales. Everyone was afraid. The local newspaper, the Texarkana Gazette, published warnings. Couples should avoid isolated areas at night, lock your doors, be vigilant. Police increased patrols. They set up a tip line. They interviewed hundreds of people, but they had no suspects, no leads, no evidence. And then, 3 weeks later, the Phantom struck again. April 14, 1946. Easter Sunday morning, around 6:00 a.m., a man was driving to work when he saw something in the road. He stopped his car. It was a body, a teenage boy, dead. The victim was Paul Martin, age 16. He'd been shot 4 times, twice in the face, twice in the back. His body had been carefully positioned in the middle of the road, displayed, like the killer wanted him to be found. Paul had been at a local dance the night before with his girlfriend, Betty Jo Booker, age 15. They'd left together around midnight in Betty Jo's car. No one had seen them since. Police immediately began searching for Betty Jo. They feared the worst. 6 hours later, they found her body. She was discovered in a ditch about 2 miles from where Paul's body was found. She'd been shot twice in the face at close range. The shots were so close that her face was barely recognizable. Betty Jo had put up a fight. She'd brought her saxophone home from the dance. Police found it near her body, dented and damaged. She tried to use it as a weapon to defend herself. This was the Phantom's 3rd attack, his 2nd double murder. 5 people were now dead in less than 2 months. The city of Texarkana descended into absolute terror. This wasn't just a random killer anymore. This was a serial killer specifically targeting young couples. No one was safe. The mayor held an emergency meeting. He declared a citywide curfew, 10 p.m., no exceptions. Anyone out after curfew would be stopped and questioned by police. Schools canceled evening activities. Churches moved their services to daytime only. Movie theaters closed early. The entire city shut down after dark. The Texas Rangers were called in. The FBI sent a team of agents. The Arkansas State Police joined the investigation. At one point, there were over 400 law enforcement officers in Texarkana searching for the Phantom Killer. Roadblocks were set up on every road leading in and out of the city. Every car was stopped. Every driver questioned. Every vehicle searched. But the Phantom had vanished. For 3 weeks, there were no attacks, no sightings, no leads. Police began to hope he'd left the area or been scared off by the massive police presence. Then, on May 3rd, the Phantom struck again, and this time, he changed his pattern completely. May 3rd, 1946, Friday night, around 11 p.m. Virgil Starks, age 37, was sitting in his living room. His farmhouse was located about 10 miles outside Texarkana city limits. Rural, isolated. But it was home. His home. Virgil was reading the evening newspaper. His wife, Katie, age 36, was in the bedroom. They'd lived in this house for years. They felt safe here. Everyone did back then. You didn't lock your doors in rural America in 1946. Suddenly, without warning, shots rang out, glass shattered. Someone was shooting through the window, into their living room. Virgil was hit twice in the head. He fell from his chair, dead before he hit the floor. Katie heard the shots. She ran into the living room. She saw Virgil on the floor, blood everywhere. She screamed. More shots. The shooter was still firing. Katie was hit, once in the face, once in the shoulder. She fell, but she remained conscious. She could hear footsteps outside. Someone walking around the house, trying the doors. The Phantom was trying to get inside. Katie knew if he got in, she was dead. She crawled across the floor, blood pouring from her wounds. She made it to the back door. Somehow, despite being shot twice, she managed to stand up. She ran. She ran across the dark field to her neighbor's house, half a mile away, shot twice, bleeding, in the dark. She pounded on their door, screaming for help. The neighbors called police. When officers arrived at the Starks' house, they found Virgil dead in the living room. The windows were shattered, bullet holes everywhere. The killer had fired multiple shots, at least 10 rounds total, but he was gone, vanished into the night. Again, this attack was different from all the others. The Phantom had always targeted young couples in cars on isolated roads, but Virgil and Katie Starks were middle-aged, married 15 years. They were attacked in their own home, their living room. Police realized something terrifying. The Phantom was escalating, changing his pattern. If he was now attacking people in their homes, no one was safe. Not young couples, not anyone. The entire city of Texarkana prepared for the worst. People armed themselves. Some families left town entirely. Those who stayed locked themselves inside at night. Windows boarded, doors barricaded. And then, nothing. The attacks stopped. The Phantom Killer never struck again. He vanished as mysteriously as he'd appeared. The investigation into the Texarkana Moonlight murders became one of the most intensive manhunts in American history. Over 400 suspects were questioned. Police followed more than 500 leads. The FBI sent forensic specialists. Texas Rangers established a command center in downtown Texarkana. Rewards totaling over $6,000, worth about $90,000 today, were offered for information. The prime suspect was a man named Youell Swinney. He was 29 years old, a career criminal with a long record. Car theft, burglary, assault. He was in Texarkana during the time of the murders. More importantly, his wife, Peggy, told police that Youell had committed the murders. She gave detailed statements. She said he'd come home with bloody clothes after the attacks, that he'd confessed to her, that she'd seen him with a gun matching the murder weapon. But Peggy refused to testify in court against her husband. Under Arkansas law at the time, a spouse couldn't be forced to testify. Without her testimony, prosecutors had no case. There was no physical evidence linking Youell to the crimes. The murder weapon, a .32 caliber automatic pistol, was never found. No fingerprints, no witnesses who could identify him, no forensic evidence at all. Youell was arrested anyway, but not for murder. He was charged with car theft, a technicality. He was convicted and sent to prison for car theft in 1947. He served 28 years. He was released in 1973 and died in 1994. He never confessed to being the Phantom Killer. Many investigators, including Texas Ranger Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez, who led the investigation, believed Youell Swinney was the Phantom, but they could never prove it. Other suspects were investigated over the decades. A man who committed suicide shortly after the murders, leaving a cryptic note. Another man who matched witness descriptions and had a history of violence. A drifter who was seen in the area during the attacks, but nothing was ever proven. In 1976, the case inspired a horror film called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The movie dramatized the murders and created the iconic image of the hooded killer that would influence horror cinema for decades. The film became a cult classic. In 2014, Texarkana police briefly reopened the case. DNA technology had advanced dramatically since 1946, but the original physical evidence had been lost or destroyed over the years. The investigation led nowhere. Today, 78 years later, the Texarkana Moonlight murders remain officially unsolved. 5 people were murdered, 3 others survived brutal attacks. An entire city lived in terror for 3 months. Then the killer simply vanished into history. The Phantom Killer's identity remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries.